All right, thanks for logging on to StateChamps.tv. Another edition of the OT with Markowski. This week coming to you from Plymouth High School or Canton High School or Salem High School, whatever you want to say. Plymouth Canton Educational Park, I think is the official name for it. And
maybe it's CPS.
Yeah, it's actually PCEP. So anyway, that has bad references in. But whatever. We're on the football field, and we're actually getting set for the game here. So obviously you know the results by now. We don't, but we want to talk, as we do every week, about some different topics. This week, Tom's top 5 rivalries in Metro Detroit. First, what got you thinking about rivalries?
Well, this is rivalry week.
It really is.
If you want to say it that way. Last night, on a Thursday night, I saw Walled Lake Central and Walled Lake Western. I do not have them in my top 5, although that would be a good one. Another one I don't have in my top 5 is Grosse Pointe South, Grosse Pointe North, which was played earlier this season. My top rivalry in this Metro Detroit area has to be Detroit Catholic Central and Brother Rice.
Right.
Just a phenomenal game. It used to be the Boys Bowl game. They played it for 29 straight years against one another in the Boys Bowl. Most of the time at Wisner, sometime at Rynearson Stadium.
Yeah, and Keyworth sometimes.
And Keyworth too. Yeah, very good, very good. And I just, even though they're playing this weekend, Saturday night at Catholic Central, it's going to be electric there. I think it loses some of its luster since it moved out of the Boys Bowl realm and out of Wisner Stadium, but it's still one of the top games in the state.
And last year at Wayne State was unbelievable.
Oh, wasn't that phenomenal? And they're going, hey, there's good news. They're going back to Wayne State next year for the Warrior Classic, so that'll be exciting. And the second one, people might, outside the city, might not recognize this, but Cass Tech and King, they just do not like each other. There's been some violence that's taken place, and that's not pretty. But this is a great rivalry that brings out a lot of fans, a lot of alumni come to this, and it's usually a terrific game. It was this year, 20-18 with Cass Tech, and there was a great crowd there too. I think the city gets knocked by some of the crowds that they get. You can't knock them for the crowd that was there. My third one is Lake Orion and Clarkston, which I remember I went to one of those games about 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. And it was so hard to park for that game. There had to be 8,000 to 9,000 people for that. And it's not only is it a great rivalry, but it's a great game between usually two of the top teams in Oakland County. This year, Lake Orion's a little down, but I'll tell you what, watch out for Clarkston, despite those 2 losses they got by the forfeit. My fourth one is Dearborn and Dearborn-Fordson. It doesn't really matter who's winning that season or who's undefeated or nobody undefeated. That's always an intense rivalry because you have the east side of Dearborn with Fordson and the west side with Dearborn High, and they just don't like each other. There's a lot of bad talk, even during the summer for this one. So I really like that game too.
It's like a century old, that rivalry.
And another one that maybe some people aren't familiar with is Marine City and Marysville. Yeah. Now, back in the days of Walt Braun, with a former coach at Marysville, they used to dominate that series. But Walt Braun retired. Marysville's still a decent ball club, but they always get 6,000 to 7,000 to 8,000 people for this one. And Marine City has really dominated recently, obviously with Tony Scarcelli having his go at head coaching there.
All right. Well, if you think that we've missed something, or maybe you got something, why don't you send us an email? Ask Tom at StateChamps.tv. Of course, we always have the radio show every Friday night from 10 to midnight on WDFN 1130 AM. Give us a call 248-848-1130, and we can talk about it. Absolutely, always a good topic. All right. Now, teams with 4 or more wins in trouble of not making the playoffs. Why don't we just kind of roll through them?
There's really a long list of these. Brother Rice, for example, should they lose to CC, that would give them 3 losses. Then they go to Cincinnati LaSalle for week 8. Then they play a crossover game against a team that's to be determined.
Definitely tough.
Point being, if they lose to CC, they're in trouble.
Right.
Waterford Lakes, you wouldn't think this team would be in trouble. But they play Shrine this weekend. I think Shrine's going to win that game. That'll give Lakes 3 losses, and they might end up playing Shrine again in the championship game at Ford Field, so that, they're in trouble. They have to get some wins there. South Lyon had a really good season, but even if they beat South Lyon East tonight, that'd be 5-2. They might get Churchill in the crossover, then they finish with Brighton, which is not going to be a picnic. Warren Mott also has had a good season, but they got Romeo this week, Dakota the following week. Hey, they better start saying their prayers and get 5-4 into that one. Warren Cousino, similar position. They got Roseville this week. I think they can get that, but you never know. Then they finish with Utica Ford, Utica Eisenhower. Could be 2 losses there. Madison and St. Clair, both 4-2. Could come down to the 8th week when they play each other. That's going to be a huge game between those 2 teams. Clintondale's had a great start, started 4-0, 4-2 now. They're going to finish with Marysville in 8th week. They're always a tough game, and I don't care what Mount Clemens' record is. That's always a rivalry game, so you never know. Farmington, Oxford, and Adams. We talked about the white division, the OAA, quite a bit. All three of those teams have a shot at making the playoffs, but with Adams' loss against Harrison, giving them 3 the other night, and Tony Anise did not play in that game.
Right.
I don't know what his status is for next week. They're in trouble. Farmington has Harrison week 9. That's an L. They're going to have, and Oxford plays Oak Park week now. Now, granted, Oak Park doesn't have a whole lot of wins, but they played everybody in that division tough. So none of that's going to be easy for any of those 3 teams.
Right, and then you finished up quickly at Grove Seaholm. Both 5-2 play each other week 9 at Seaholm, Seaholm at Ferndale.
And another
Groves next week.
And another team too to look at in Ypsilanti Lincoln's never made the state playoffs. Started out the year 4-1. They finished with Adrian, Ypsi, and Heartland. Now I don't think they're going to beat Adrian tonight or this weekend, but Ypsi and Heartland, those are winnable games. Tough one to get in there for Ypsi Lincoln, though. And what's just a side note on the teams making the playoffs. You look at the Division I and the PSL. Now, they set up the new system this year, Division I, Division II. There probably be only 3 teams from Division I making the playoffs. Castech, King, Crockett. You might have as many as 5 in Division II. Now, if your whole plan was to be fair as far as teams getting in the state playoffs, this system doesn't work. But if your plan was, forget about the playoffs, we want to make it more competitive, then maybe this system works because you're going to have teams that are not as good as Cody, not as good as Southeastern, making the playoffs in Division II.
And then finally, Carlson Woodhaven week 9. You think that's going to be a good one?
I don't know. We have to ask John Kidd who's going to win that one. But that'll be a knockdown, because if you look at their schedules, it looks like they're both going to be 5-3 heading into that week. I think my state champs might be there.
We will find out, that's for sure. And of course, if you want us to cover a game, send us an email idea at statechamps.tv. That's it for another edition of the OT. Again, listen to us on the radio every Friday night. And we're on WDFN 1130 AM. We'll see you.